and good afternoon and welcome. Today's webinar will cover two important topics in Drupal, taxonomy and views. There will be a 60-minute presentation followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. Joining me today are Scott Nabbs and Ryan Quinn. Scott will start the presentation on taxonomy and followed by Ryan on views. A couple of reminders before we start. This webinar is being recorded, and a recording will be posted on the IndieCommerce Webinar Center by early next week. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please type in your questions in the question box that you see on your control panel. And after the presentation, during the Q&A time, we will address all your questions in the order in which we received. I'm going to hand it over to Scott to start the presentation on taxonomy.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Nabbs, Senior Customer Service Guy for IndieCommerce. Today we're going to be talking about, we have a couple of topics, but I'm going to start the conversation. We're going to be talking about taxonomy. As the screen shows, here is a couple of bullet points, but basically taxonomy is a way of classifying and categorizing content. Now, one of the most obvious places to use this would be, for instance, on events. Let's say you have events almost every day of the week, and some of them are author signings, and some of them are children's events, and some of them are gaming events and things like that. So taxonomy allows you to create a list of terms, and then you can tag all of your different content. This event is this type. It is a musical event. This event is an author signing. And that way you can bring all these things together. So you could create a list of these terms that link, so I could click a link in the sidebar that says author signings, and I would see a list of all of the author signing events rather than just an entire calendar of all of my events. What we're going to do here, since Ryan's going to be working with events a little later, showing you some views, what we're going to do is we're going to use this instead for some gift items. We've created some gift items, and then we're going to tag them by price, and then we can pull them all together and offer our customers a simple link that allows them to look for gifts that are all under $10 or under $20, that sort of thing. So as you can see here, in this webinar, we're going to discuss how to create a vocabulary, which is a list of terms. We're going to add terms to the vocabulary. Then we apply that vocabulary to a specific content type. And then once we've done that, we can go back to our individual nodes, each of our events or each of our gift items, and then tag each one of them with the appropriate vocabulary term. So where we're going to start this is we're going to go to, there we go, whoops, structure and taxonomy. Now, if we come in here, you can see already that there are a couple of vocabularies. So I have one that's called, for instance, pretty obvious, event type. And if we go in, we can see that there are a bunch of types of events, author signings, games, music, etc. We also have a list of random weird terms, and so just to show you that the vocabulary has a specific name, and then contained within the vocabulary is a list of related terms. So what we're going to do is create a new vocabulary that we can apply to our gifts. Now, in order to keep this under 3 hours long, we're only going to use 2 terms. We're going to create a vocabulary. We're only going to put 2 different terms in it, and then we'll use that to tag our existing content. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is add a vocabulary. So again, under structure, taxonomy, you can go directly to add vocabulary, but I like to go to the page here first. We can see what vocabularies currently exist. Let's add a new one. Now this one we're going to call gifts by price. And we're going to save that. And there we go, we're practically done. Not really, but you can see now we have a new vocabulary name called gifts by price. Now if I click on list terms, there aren't any terms here yet. But of course Drupal knows this, and they give me a helpful link. So I can add some terms. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to categorize my gifts, again, by price. I'm going to, in this case, I'm only going to create 2 categories. I'm going to do one for under $20 and then another one for under $50. So the first one I'm going to do here, we're going to do under $20. I can put a description in here. Well, you know, why not? So I'll put that there. Those are gifts under $20. Keep in mind that when you create a list of terms, each term will eventually become a link. It will link to a page that brings all of those tagged items together. You can change the URL that is automatically generated, but Drupal does a pretty good job of naming those paths correctly. So if you don't like the way that Drupal is naming the path, that is the link to the particular page, you can uncheck the box here and you can put your own URL alias in there. But we're not going to do that here. So I'm just going to click Save. Now, as soon as you create a term, Drupal assumes that you want to create another one. So it puts me right back on the same page. Here's my first term that I've just created, and from here I can add another word, another term. So in this case, we'll do under $50. And again, we can grab this. So, okay. And again, we'll just click Save. So now I have a very simple vocabulary. It only has 2 terms in it. I can have a lot of terms if I want, but again, we want to keep this kind of short. So we just want to show you how to do this. So creating the vocabulary first is rather simple to do. Obviously, you're going to want to put a little thought into it. It's all going to depend on what you're looking to categorize and how. So that's going to determine your list of terms. So now that we've created a vocabulary, what we need to do is apply it to a particular content type. So in order to do this, we're going to go, now of course if I go to content, add content, and we have a content type here or a product class called gifts. So if I wanted to create a new gift that I wanted to sell, then I would click here. But that's not what we're looking to do. In this case, we're going to go to Structure, Content Types, and then we're going to go to Gifts. From the first page here, you can change what this is called, but we're not going to do that. What we're really looking to do is manage the fields that are associated with this particular product class. So when I go to create a particular gift, it's going to ask me, you're familiar with this, it's going to ask for a name or a title, it wants a description in the body, it allows you to upload an image, but we're going to add another field here. And keep in mind, this is not information yet that your customer sees. This is when I'm building a gift, I'm going to see these fields. So in this case, I want to add a new field. And what that field is going to be, this one's gift by, let's see, gift by price. And we're going to call it gift by price terms. And over here, we're going to look, now this is what we're looking for in this under select a field, we're looking for something very particular. It is term reference, and that's why we use the word term in the field name itself. So we're going to use this term reference at the bottom, and it's going to give me, it's going to offer me a selection. Personally, I like the select list. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. It could be checkboxes, it could be radio buttons, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to use a select list, and I'm going to go ahead and say save. Okay, and of course, whenever you're adding a field to a particular content type, Drupal wants to know a little bit about it. They want to know, first of all, for this field, I could be pulling any one of my vocabularies. You saw that we had 3 of them, but in this case, I want very specifically my gifts by price. My event types are not very helpful here. So now that I have that, I'm going to click Save Field Settings. And again, it wants to know a little bit about it. Is it going to be a required field? Is it going to be, do I want to change the label on it? Most of this I just leave as the default values. I don't really need to do anything. As far as required, I do want to point out, if you are creating a vocabulary that you're going to apply to existing content types, you don't want to make it required. Consider, very briefly, if you make it a required field, you already have nodes of that content type that don't have it. So already you're sort of conflicting with yourself. So in this case, we're not going to make it required because we already have a bunch of gifts. If I were creating a brand new content type or product class, then I could say I want it required, and then every single one that is created will have that field required on it. So we're not going to make this required. We're going to come down here. Again, I could put some help text for my staff, but I really don't think they're going to need any help with this one. Then down here at the bottom, I can decide which one will show automatically to the customer by default. I want none to show. I don't want it to choose any of them. I want them to go ahead. Or I'm sorry, when I'm tagging my content, I don't want it to say under $20 by default. I want it to say none by default. Okay. At the bottom here, we're just going to leave this again as it is. The vocabulary again is gift by price, and we're just going to go ahead and click Save Settings. So now you can see in the fields that are available to me when I'm creating my gift, what I'm going to have is the name, the description, an image, and then I have this little tagging system, gifts by price. So I'm going to show this to you very briefly. I'm going to go to Content, Add Content, and we're going to say Gift. And here is where I put in the name, then I have my description in the body, and I have my image at the bottom, and then down here I have gift by price terms. Now, I don't know about you, but I get very used to filling out these fields, and once I've filled out the name and the description and I get down here, I tend to run through these. I almost never have a specific file that I need to upload, and I almost always jump to the bottom and click Save. And I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to move this so that it is all the way up here. So right after I put in the name, the very next thing it's going to ask me for is the term that I want to use. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Structure, Content Types. I'm going to go back to Gifts, and I'm going to go back to Manage Fields. And all I want to do here is grab this term, gift by price, and I want to pull it up so that it is below the name. And then I'm going to click Save. Okay, so now let's go back. We'll go to Content, Add Content, and now we have Gift. So now as I create a gift, so I'm going to create my thingamajig, and I can immediately say it's going to be under $20. And then I come down and fill in the rest of my information. This we don't have to go through right now. So now when I create it, it will automatically be tagged as one of my gifts that is under $20. But of course, I don't need to create a bunch of gifts here. My colleague Ryan has already gone through and graciously added a bunch of gifts that we can already use. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Content. And here I have all of my gifts that are listed. So all I have to do now is go through. Let's pick the first one here, Store Bookmark, and I'm going to say, and I'm going to come down here, I'm going to look at the price of this one. This is $2, so that definitely falls into my under $20 category. I'm just going to scroll all the way to the bottom and click Save. And we're going to do a few of these. We're going to edit the next one, the Store T-shirt. This one is $10, so again, we're just going to say under $20. Click Save on that. And a few others. I'm just going down here. This one is under $50. And click Save. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through and tag all of them. You get the idea. Every one of them will have that little vocabulary on them, and I can choose which term I want. But if I go now to the Store T-shirt, what you can see is at the bottom here, I have this little thing, gift by price terms, and I have under $20. And if I click on this, I now come to a list of all of the items that I've tagged as under $20. So they're all pulled together. Of course, I only got around to 2 of them. But as I go through my list and take care of that, my list will grow. As I go through my different content items, my list will grow. Now again, this can be used for events. It can be used to separate out your staff reviews and things like that. Now of course, if a customer is going to see this, they actually have to go now to one of these pages where they'll see the tag at the bottom here. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to pull this tag up so it's at the top of this item. So again, I'm going to go back to Structure, content types, gifts. Now in this case, we're not managing the fields that I use to put the thing together. We're going to manage the display that appears to the customer. So now what I'm going to do is I have my gift by price terms. And all I want to do is, again, I'm just going to grab the arrow here. I want to move it up so that it is at the top of the page. You can move it around, play with it wherever it is that you want it to fall. So let's do this. And now I'll go back to my content. And again, we'll click on this t-shirt here. Now I have my terms at the top. So as soon as a customer gets here, they'll see this little tag here. And they'll say, oh, it's a t-shirt. It's under, oh, look at this. There's a link here that shows me a bunch of things that are under $20. And again, hopefully your page will be a little longer than this. Now, we don't always want customers to have to get to that item first and then see that there's a link there. What we could do is create a block that sits in our sidebar that says gifts by price. So for instance, let's go into our blocks here. And I have a block down here, and it's called gifts by price, not surprisingly. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it into my sidebar, my first sidebar. So I have my gifts by price over here. And now I want to, oops, let's save that so it doesn't move. And now what I want to do is configure it. So what I'm going to do is, well, you know what, actually I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm going to go back to my content. I'm going to go back to this t-shirt. And here's what you'll notice. If I click on this link for under $20, what I come up with is a very particular path that Drupal has created. And it is category / gifts price / under 20. I'm sure you're all familiar with what Drupal does to names of pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this block. My gift by price. I'm going to configure it. And I have here, I'm going to change this first of all. It says here under $10. Let's say under 20. Let's be consistent. So under 20, I'm going to cause it to be a link. I want it to be an internal path. And I'm just going to drop the path in and click OK. And the same thing here. I'm going to put in a link, but I'm going to change this to 50 and click OK. And I'm going to come down to the bottom and click Save. So let's go back to our home page. And now I have a block down here that says gift by price. If I click under 20, I will find all of my gifts that are listed at under $20. And if I click under 50, now keep in mind, oh, I only tagged one. So it's a very short page. But obviously, I didn't finish tagging all of my content. So these pages would generally be longer. And that's pretty much how taxonomy works. Now, the reason we started with this is because it does lead into some useful information about views. Taxonomy can be used with views. Let's see, but I did want to show you very quickly. I think I did this. Let's look at our calendar here. If I look at a particular book signing, you can see here I've also added some terms. So in this case, I have some author signings. And if I click on that again, you can see now a list of all of my author signings. Or if you wanted, again, I might have a block in my sidebar that leads you to all of my musical events or all of my gaming events, etc., etc. So taxonomy is really simple to master, and it's really useful for tagging just about anything. You may not think of what it's useful for right now, but if you put your mind to it, I'm sure you can find something. So at this point, I am going to hand the reins over to my colleague Ryan, and she's going to talk a little bit about views, which are really a useful and powerful tool on Drupal. And I will be listening attentively because Ryan is really good at this, and she knows way more than I do. Okay, yeah, no pressure. Sorry, Ryan. Okay, so let me switch this over to Ryan. I'm going to give her control, and you're going to be looking at her screen now.
Okay, hello everyone. Scott did a really great job of leading up to my part of this presentation, and I hope I can live up to his standard. To start with, we're going to go over a brief introduction of views, an overview of the administrative interface for the views page. We will edit an existing view, add color coding to the event calendar view, and then we're going to add a filter to the event calendar view. Before I get to all of that, though, I am going to point out some of the important tips that you should always keep in mind while working on a view. If you are not familiar with views and you'd like to make a change to a view that already exists on your site, we really recommend that you clone the view first and make your changes on that to test it. Then once you're sure it works, you can go ahead and make the same changes to the actual view itself. Your view will prompt you regularly to save the changes you are making. It's really important that you save those. If you come away from the page after making 10 changes and you haven't saved, you will lose all of that work. The next part is to utilize the administrative names and description fields. You'll see those frequently when you're editing your view, and they can be really helpful to you later when you're trying to identify what the view was created for. And then to pay attention to your apply options. You're going to see this when I'm actually going through making changes to a view, but you'll have the option to apply it to all portions of the view or just the portion you're actually working on. And typically you're going to want to make sure that the changes you make are just applied to the portion you're working on. So now that we've covered that, we're going to move on to the view itself. To navigate to your view section, you will come to Structure and Views. And that brings you to the View Center, which has a list of all existing views for your site. We're going to start with a simple view that I created for the purpose of this webinar, and I've called it Demo of a Simple View, and I'm going to click Edit. So this is your View Edit page, and we're going to first actually go over what this page means, what the different sections are. So first you have your top portion here where you see the name of my view, you have an add button, you have edit view name and description. These are your view controls. They're going to control the edit page itself, what page you're editing of the view, if you want it to create additional parts of the view, for instance if you want it to create a block, which I am going to walk you through a little later, and if you wanted to edit the view name and description. Clone the view is here as well. So if you were going to make changes to this yourself, we would recommend you clone it first. And you can reorder the displays, delete the view, all sorts of nifty items here. Below the view controls, you have your display controls. That's the display name, which I've named GIFs, Demo of Simple View. And then your controls here, which let you specifically clone the items of this portion of your view itself. And sorry about that, I accidentally clicked away. I'm going to move back to that one right now. Okay, so to pick up where we left off, now you're going to come to the left side of your view. And the left side are all your display details. So for instance, we start with title, and I've named it Demo of a Simple View. This is one of those places where you're going to see an administrative area. So this title displays here, and it's going to display in your page title, block title, etc. So definitely use that so that you can determine what the view is, and if you're displaying that in a block, it'll display as the block title on your page as well. Then you come to Format, which is going to control what format you're using to display your view. Right now I've chosen a grid, so if I scroll down a bit to the preview, you'll see that my grid is set to be 2 columns, and that's why it's showing everything in a row of 2. It's also going to give you what you're showing. In this case, I've chosen to show content and the teasers of my content instead of fields. you might choose to create a view that's utilizing fields itself. Maybe you only want to show the title and image of your content type. Your filter criteria is going to determine what you're showing. So in this, I've set it to display only published items of my content type, GIFs, and then your sort criteria, which I've set to be sorted by title right now in ascending order. Then you come to the center part of your view. Those are your display settings. They control the center panel. The center panel controls where your page is set. So in this part, I've set the path as my test site, which in this case would be videodemo.d7.indiebound.com/demo of a simple view. So if I come to this page on my test site, it's going to look like this. Sorry about that. Let's grab that one more time. And it leads me straight to the view page I've created. If you wanted to add special headers or footers to your view, you can use these fields. And you're able to set a pager as well. So if you didn't want to display all items as I have, if you only want to display a few at a time, you can alter that here. And you also get to control whether or not you display a more link. To the very right of your view controls is the Advanced tab, which is usually minimized by default, and you can expand upon it by dropping the arrow down. The Advanced tab is not a tab that you are going to use for most views. They are there if you need it to include advanced aspects such as relationships to make more fields available or contextual filters. But for the most part, and especially while you're just beginning to familiarize yourself with views, you are not going to use this area. And at the very bottom of your view controls is your preview window. By default, auto preview will always be selected, and it's going to give you a preview of the view you're creating. And you can always click Update Preview if you don't think it's giving you the most recent information. So that's the overview of the view control area itself. Now we're going to move on to actually making a few edits to this. So as you can see, and as Scott mentioned before, we created several gift content products, and we want to display those somewhere on our site. We don't want to just create a block right now, and we don't want someone to have to go to each page individually. So as I mentioned, I pulled in the content type of GIFs, and I set it to a grid. But I don't want this page to display in a grid. So I'm going to change it by clicking on Grid, and we're going to make it a list instead. Now, here's one of those important tips before. Right now, it says all displays. So if I had a page and a block here, I would be making this change to all of those. But I only want to change this page display. So I'm going to set this to this page override. You'll see my apply button now says apply this display. And I'm going to click that. And it's going to ask you for some additional information. Right now, I want to leave this to the default, where add view rows classes and add striping are already selected. So I'm just going to go ahead and click apply this display again. And again, here's one of those important steps. I'm being prompted to save my changes. So I am going to save. And once that's saved, I'm going to come back down to my preview. And you'll notice that I'm no longer displaying a grid with two columns. Now everything is just listed one item below the other. And I want to make one more change to this. I do not want to filter it. I do not want to sort it by title. I want to sort it by the date I created it so that my newest items are always appearing at the top. So I'm going to click on the Add button. and I'm going to search for my create date. You can scroll through this whole list here if you choose to. You'll see any of the available fields that are there to be added, but I know that I want it to be my post date. So I'm going to select content post date. Again, I only want to apply it to this display right now, so I'm choosing this page override and apply this display. It's going to ask me for some additional information about exactly when they should take into account it was created. I'm going to leave it defaulted to the second and click apply this display again. And I am going to scroll back up because I know I'm being prompted to save my changes again. And I'm going to save. And now instead of being sorted by their title, they are sorted by when I created them. So again, now if I go and view the actual page I've created, this is what it looked like before as a grid sorted by title. But I'm going to refresh my page, and now it is a list sorted by when I created them. So my stickers were created first, followed by, my stickers were created most recently, and a little earlier than that, bookmarks, and then a little earlier than that, this sweatshirt. Okay. But my customers are not going to know what the path of this page is by default. We need to add it somewhere. So you can add this link into any of your menu paths. And you're probably familiar already with adjusting menus. So you go to Structure, Menu, select the menu you want to add it to, and place it in there by clicking Add Link. I've already done so. So if you click on GIFs, you are brought to that page again. And that way my customers can find this easily and can quickly shop GIFs available in my store. Now you have another option with a view that makes it really easy to display this information in additional ways. I have this page created, but I want to put a block about it on my home page as well, so that somewhere on my site they can always see gift information. I'm going to come back to my view, and in my control area, I'm going to say Add, and select Block. And that's going to create a block with all the same information I had previously selected. And in this case, I want to save because I'm being prompted again. And I'm going to make a few changes to my block. So I'm going to change my display name to make it easier to recall what it is a few days from now when I come back to this. So I'm going to change it to my GIFs block. And I'm just going to put in a description that says it's a block of store GIFs. I'm going to apply that. And again, I'm going to save. And in this case, I don't want to display all my items right away. I only want to display one item at a time, just so that one of the items for GIFs is always there, and then I'm going to allow them to page through them. So I'm going to say to display a pager. I'm going to choose a mini pager right now. And again, now I have two different parts of my block. I have a page and a block, and I only want to edit this block. So I'm going to say this block override and apply this display. And I'm going to change the items to display to 1. I'm going to leave everything else set to the default and choose apply this display. I'm going to save my changes. And if you come down to the preview again now, you'll see that only one of them is appearing. But for my block, I don't want this display specifically. I want slightly different. I'm going to say Format Grid. I'm going to change that to be non-formatted list again. I'm going to say this block override again. I'm going to leave this to the default. And then that's set. And you'll see that my little mini pager is right here. That gives me the option to scroll through and see each product one by one. I'm going to save this block, and then I'm going to place it on my site. To do that, I'm going to go to Structure and Blocks, and I'm going to find my block that I just created. And my block is hiding from me, so if you'll bear with me just a moment. Here we go. And it's set to be in my sidebar first. And I'm going to save that. And if I go to my home page now, that block should be appearing right here. You see that they can see the first item, and they can scroll through and see each one if they'd like. By clicking on it, they're taken to a larger image, or they can click on the title and go to the actual product page itself. Okay, so that's our simple view, and you can certainly visit your view section and check out different views that exist. And again, remember to always clone them before you make any changes so that you make sure your changes work before working on the view that your site is using. But there are some other nifty things we can do with views that are a little more complicated, and we're going to move into those now. So I'm going to come back to Structure and Views. And what we're going to do first is add some color coding to our event content type. Our event calendar. And so we're going to look through to find the event calendar. And here it is right here. We're going to click Edit. And you'll see, as I mentioned before, anytime you have more than one section of review, they're all listed here in your controls. So for the event calendar, you have month, week, day, year, events calendar, upcoming, recent events, and you can work on any of these. For today, we're specifically making changes to the month. And for the color coding, you have to have already entered your taxonomy, which Scott went over before. He pointed out how on the events we already created, taxonomy was already added. So once your taxonomy is added, to color code based off of it, you come to your view, and here we're using fields. In the view I originally showed you, we were using content. Now we're using fields, and we're going to add the field for color coding, and that is your taxonomy type. So once you click on Add, you again come to all the possible fields you could add. And we're looking for what you named your taxonomy vocabulary. So I happen to know that we call this event terms, and I'm selecting event type terms. Again, I only want to apply it to this page, so I'm changing my apply settings. And it's going to ask me if I want the label, what type of formatter I want, and then also have some additional fields that you can edit if you'd like. But for this type of change, we're just leaving it checked and clicking Apply this display. Then once that's selected, we want to go ahead and put in our color legend. So I'm going to pop over to December for a moment, where all my colors. I'm going to show you that now you can see the event type terms on it. So I have some author signings, I have some music, I have some games. Okay, I am now going to add in my color codings. And to do that, you come to Format, Calendar Entities, and click the Settings button. From here, you want to make sure Provide Default Field Wrapper selected, and you're going to choose your inline fields, which in this case is our taxonomy term already created, which is event type terms. We're going to scroll down, and you'll find Legend Colors. So our colors are based not on content type, but taxonomy. We will select based on taxonomy, confirm that the correct term field is selected, which is correct, event type terms. Now we get to choose our colors, which is the fun part. So if you click into the field, you get a color wheel, and by selecting a shade from the color wheel, you'll see that your color hex code changes. So we're going to make author signings red, and then we're going to keep coming down until all of our terms have a different color. So green for games, blue for music, poetry readings will be yellow, and worn reenactments will be pink. We need to apply. So I've clicked apply this display again, and I am sure I'm being prompted to save, so I'm scrolling back up to save my changes. And now, if I check my preview for December, you'll see I have stripes for all of my events. So my games have a green stripe, my music has a blue stripe, so author signings are red, and our war reenactments are pink. And that doesn't just carry out to the preview. You actually visit your calendar here. It carries out there as well, so that when your customers are visiting your site, they have a nice little color match to any type of event and can determine that if they're just interested in games, those are the ones highlighted in green. Okay, so that's one really great way of utilizing taxonomy on your view. And another is to add a filter. So again, we're still working on the event calendar, and we still want to be on the month display. And I want to add a filter this time. So instead of fields, I'm going to come to filter criteria and click add. And I want to filter by the event type again. So I'm going to search for it instead of scrolling through. And here's content event type terms. And again, I only want to be on this month display, so I'm changing that and clicking apply this display. In this case, I don't want to autocomplete. I want a drop-down menu, so I'm going to choose select type drop-down and select apply and continue. And I want to expose this filter to my visitors so that they can really use this filter to choose what types of events they want to see. I'm going to alter my label. I don't need it to give the exact name. I'm just going to say it is event types. I want to make sure that the operator selected as is one of, and it can be any of these, so I'm going to select them all. Everything else I'm going to leave as the default right now and choose apply this display. Again, remember to always save your changes. And you'll see that I now have a filter on my preview. And again, that carries out to the event calendar itself. So here it was before with just the color coding and no filter. And here it is now with my filter. So right now I have just author signings appearing, but I can set it to any and see all of them again. I can say I just want war reenactments and apply, and it'll just show me those for the month I'm on. So views alone is a really powerful tool, and you can use it to do a lot of really neat things and show things in very different ways. Paired with taxonomy, it becomes even more useful and gives you a lot of different options that you can really use to display information to your customers. So that wraps up our view review, and I'm going to turn things over to Geetha so that we can start taking some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Scott and Ryan, for that wonderful presentation. As you can see, the views is, along with taxonomy, it's a very important tool to have on Drupal website. And what's interesting is there are many views that come out of the box without doing anything. Like if you go into structures and views, most of the views that you see here on this page, of course, this is a test site and we have created some extra views, but a lot of these views are already available on your site. And you are actually looking at views every day, even without realizing that you are looking at a view. One of the views that you most commonly see is when you go to the store and orders. In Drupal 6, this page was not a view. This was a table that was created in the module. But on Drupal 7, they have decided to make it into a view. So what you see here is a view that pulls up all the order information with all the in a table format. These are the columns, and what you see up here, this is a filter, and these are all the columns. And if it is a link, then that means it is sortable. And you have these two, which are extra columns that we added because we thought it would be useful. So since it's a view, it gives the stores the freedom to change this any way you please. In Drupal 6, we were stuck with what the UberCart offered, but in Drupal 7, you can go in and change. And as Ryan mentioned earlier, anytime you want to go in and edit an existing view, please be sure that you create a clone of that view and then work out of that clone. And once you have what you really want, and then you can go in and edit the actual view. For example, this is the order view. Suppose we want to edit this, you would go to Structure, Views, and the order page is listed as UC orders. So this is the order view that you're seeing. So right now I'm going to go ahead and edit this because we have two columns there which are not sortable. Let's make that sortable and see how that's done. It's pretty easy. Let's go first and edit. And you are in this admin page. So this section here lists all the fields that are available for this view. It starts with the actions that you see, what you see on the left side, then the order ID, the user ID, the billing name, and all this. So we see that all the first few fields are sortable, but the payment method and credit card that we added are not yet sortable. So let's make those two columns sortable. For that, you would go into Settings, and here you have the setting for the sort, whether the column can be made sortable or not. So let's make the payment method sortable. And anytime you are on this page, just make sure that all the default orders are the way you want it to be. The funny thing about this view is every time you get to this page, the order ID becomes ascending. But in general, what we want is descending because you want the latest orders to show up on top. So we fix that, and then we have added a sortable field to the payment method. And important, we have to make sure that we make this change only to this page and then apply. And we go ahead and save this. Now, if you go to the bottom to see the preview, you can see that the payment method is now sortable. So we have customized this view for many stores upon request, but I just wanted to mention that this is available for you to go in and make changes. Sometimes you don't want to see the credit card type. In this case, we wanted to see it, so we added this column. You can remove this, and let's see how to add the shipping method to this view, because that's a very common request that we get from stores, that they want to see the shipping method for every order. So for that, we go into Add. And all these fields are grouped together by the entity type. Shipping method is listed under the Uber cart order line item. And Uber cart actually calls it as the shipping title, not the shipping method. So we select that and apply. We want to keep the label. The label is what is going to appear on the top of that column. And let's change this into shipping method. We don't want a colon after the label, and apply. Let's save our changes. If you go down to the preview, now you see the shipping method. That's great. Now we want to make the shipping method sortable, so we do the same thing that we did before. So that is under settings. We go down here, so this is the shipping method. We make it sortable, and we are making the change only to this page, and the order ID is descending, so it's all good. So let's go save it, apply, and save. We go in the preview, so now you see the shipping method. So this is an important feature to have. So just by looking at this page, you have all the information you need about this order: the payment method, the shipping method, the order total, and the status. And another quick thing we can do is let's rearrange these columns. We want the shipping method to come here and the credit card type to move to the end. So if you want to change the order in a view, then go to here. Instead of the add, if you click on the down arrow, you see another option for rearrange. And this gives you this handle where you can just pull it up. And this is applying only to this page. Apply to display and save. Now let's go look at the view, and this is exactly how we wanted it. Now since this change has been made, now we can go to the store orders page where we have the order view, and now we have the two columns that we added: the payment method, the shipping method, and we have moved the credit card type to the end. So this is a view that most of the store admins look at every day, and if you want to change this, it is very easy to change. You can customize it to add any fields that you want to this view. Another view that is available out of the box, a very common thing that customers see, is the browse book. If you go to browse book, this is a page that lists all the titles. And the first page lists the titles that are high up on the Ingram desirable number. And the stores do not have control to remove titles from this page. This is what we offer. But stores have the freedom to change the way it looks. Sometimes we hear from stores, especially in this page, depending the way it is arranged, it's a grid. It has the image, and then it has the title, the author, the price, and the add to cart, and the add to wish list, and the availability status. And because it's a grid, and because the titles of these books can vary in size, and the images can vary in size, sometimes the grid doesn't look very clean. So if you want to change the look of this view, you cannot change what content is displayed on the view, but you can change the way it is displayed on the view. Another easy way to edit any view is if you put your mouse over the view, you see this gear, and you can click on the edit view. it takes you directly to the edit page of that view. Now, if you look at the preview, this is what you see, exactly what we saw on that page. Now let's go ahead and change this into a table. So what you do is change this. Right now it is using a grid. Instead, you can use a table. And we want to make sure that it affects only this display. Apply to this display. Now it shows the settings page for the table. So now this table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. 6 columns on a page can be a little too much. So we are going to combine a couple of columns together. So let's have the title and the author list in the same column. So we are going to move this into the title column, and we are going to move the add to cart into the sell price column. So now we have only 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. And since these two, the title and the author list, are in the same column, we want to make sure they are listed one below the other. So you add a line break. And here you add another line break. And this is applied only to this page. So you go down and you apply this display. Now, if you look at the preview, now you can already see the changes that you've made. So you've made it into a table which has 4 columns. This is the image, the title, and the author's name, the price, the add to cart, add to wish list, and the availability status. So sometimes on some themes and some sites, this looks much neater than the grid view. And this is an easy change that you can make to this view. And this is a view that's available out of the box on every site. All you have to do is go in and make a few changes, and then you get a completely different display. So this is what you see. And I personally think that this looks much better than the grid. And if you think you don't want any column, or if you want to move this column, the availability status, to the left here, all those changes can be made to the view. Yeah, since we had some extra time, we thought we can share some really unique and interesting views with you. So now let's open up for questions. We see that there are a few questions. Okay, the first question is from Chris. Just give me a second. Okay, the first question is from Chris. Did terms replace tags? Yes, in Drupal, the terms and tags mean the same. They are meant for tagging content. In some places, in some documentation, they use the word terms, and in some documentations, they use the term tags, and they are the same. The next question is, how would you create, just a minute, from David, how would you create a taxonomy for books? Example, tagging books in the holiday catalog. Yes. One of the things to remember is stores do not have access to the book content that we provide. The ABA books that we provide, stores do not have access to edit those books. So since you cannot edit the books, it's not possible to tag those books or add taxonomy terms to those books. But there is another way you can do it. You can create pages. You can create a page and add all the books as a book list to that page. And then you can tag that page as a holiday. You can create a vocabulary called holiday, and you can create terms under the holiday vocabulary. One of the terms could be books. And then you can tag that page as a holiday books. That's the only way you can do it, because you do not have access to actually edit the ABA books that we offer. And the next question, oh, that's not a question. Okay. Yeah, I think we are still around. We'll be here for at least another 10-15 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the question box, and we will address those questions. As I said before, this webinar is being recorded, and a recording of this will be posted on the IndieCommerce Webinar Center. If you have not been to that page on bookweb.org, please visit that page. We have all the previous recordings of all the webinars up there, And there is also the IndieCommerce Video Center, where we have a lot of useful training videos that Scott has been recording. And we have at least, I think, 6 there by now. And we will be adding more in the future. We have at least 1 video going up there every week. And also the IndieCommerce Help Center has a lot of documentation. The documents for all the topics that were covered today, we are still in the process of preparing it and checking it. So it will be up there in the next couple of weeks. We have another question. How do you move from a clone to the the realty? Okay, that's a good question. Let's say you want to try something, and then you create the clone, and then you work on it and make sure you like what you've done and you're satisfied. And the next step would be, yes, for you to go in and apply those exact same changes to the real view. There is no way to actually move the clone into the real view, but once you have tried it, the next step is for you to go in and edit the real view. Okay, off topic. Oh, but I don't know how to create a wish list button. Oh, yes. Wish list button is not something you create. Okay, every site will have a module for the wish list. If that module is enabled on your site, the wish list button automatically appears on all your products. If you don't see the wish list button on your site, please let us know. Please write to staff@bookweb.org and we will have the module enabled for you. And I think as I'm at this, right now, Scott is actually enabling that module for you. So you should have that in the next couple of minutes. And David, I think you're set. You should see the wish list button on all products, books and products. And Sally, just to add to what you had asked before, views is, I'm not going to deny that. Views is definitely, it has a steep learning curve. But by practice, it becomes so much easier. The first time I created a view on Drupal 6, I think I created it 15 times before I got it right. So the more you do it, it becomes so much easier. And what we actually showed you today while Ryan was creating the views are mostly the simple. Let me go back to the user interface. So let's edit a view that's already here. The one that Ryan did today. Okay. Most of the configurations that we did today were limited to the first and the second columns here. These are the basic settings for any view. But if you look here under advanced, what you see here is much more that you can do with views. Let's say that you have an order view. And the order view, by default, it only pulls the order information. But let's say you want to have the view list all the order products too, in addition to the order numbers. So in that case, you have to create a relationship because the ordered products are saved in a separate table. So you have to create a relationship between the order table and the ordered products table. And that's where this relationship comes into the picture. So you can combine the information from different sources to appear in one view. And contextual filters. This is actually a very interesting thing. It's very useful and it can make your site so much better. One example where this can be used is, let's say a customer lands on a book page, a regular book page. And let's say your store has an event where they're promoting that book or the author is visiting. And when the customer lands on the book product page, if you want a block to appear on the right side of your site for that product page, listing the event that is related to that book, you can do that using the contextual filter. This contextual filter, you can configure it so it can display content based on the URL. So for a particular book's product page, the URL would be book/ISBN. So you can say if the URL is book/a particular ISBN to show this view. So that's an interesting use of that contextual filter. That's just one of the uses, like something that we have done for another site, so it just came to my mind. But anything that is here is a lot more advanced. But even without getting into the advanced section, just by using the basic configuration for a view, just by using the format, by using different displays and different fields and different sort criteria, there's a lot that you can do with views. So if there are no more questions today, I think we can end this webinar. As always, please feel free to write to staff@bookweb.org with any questions regarding the topics covered in this webinar or any topic. And also, please look out for a follow-up email that will be sent out in the next couple of hours. The follow-up email will have links to the IndieCommerce Webinar Center and the IndieCommerce Documentation Center, that is the IndieCommerce Help Center. Please take time to go and look at the documents and the videos and our past webinars. And also, an important note, the follow-up email will also have a link to a survey. We request that you take a few minutes to complete that survey. Any feedback from you is definitely going to help us improve future webinars. And also, in a week or so, we will be sending out another email to all members asking for ideas for topics for future webinars. As of now, we have one more webinar scheduled in November, and if there are requests for more topics, we will continue to provide these webinars through December and into the next year. So we hope to hear from you. And I think that's it for today. Thank you all for joining this, and have a good evening. Bye.